Hi, it's Bumble. Welcome back to my channel. So, in terms of movies I watched on my vacation, this was the first one that I watched it was kind of interesting. When I was originally picking movies, I ended up picking some like dramas and stuff, and I was picking movies I had really wanted to see that I didn't think I'd probably find on streaming services, and then I ended up watching ones that were like Disney Plus exclusives. Kind of interesting how it turned out. But I started with this one. The other drama I watched, there's a reason I don't have a video on it, I think it's called A Big Bold Beautiful Journey, and it was really, really good. It's just the reason I had stopped watching it was because I had internet connection at some point on my trip, and then saw it was on Netflix. Hopefully it's still on there, and I thought, yeah, I'd rather just watch this in one sitting at home. But I did watch Eternity while I was gone. Like I said, first thing that I watched. I don't really know how I feel about it now. I think it's hard because it was the first one I watched, so it was at the beginning of the week, and now it's the end of the week, and I've kind of forgotten a lot of stuff about it, which is a bummer. I'd really wish when I had watched it, I felt a lot of things while watching it, and it was kind of kept me on my toes a little bit, and that I wish I could have done a video on it. Like right after I finished it, I'd have like so much more energy and kind of like opinions on it, but now I'm like kind of struggling to remember stuff, and I think that made me kind of like it a little less. I know that sounds weird, but I know from what I remember, it's like kind of a depressing movie, honestly, but I smiled at the end of it. I remember that I finished the movie, I went to bed, and I had a smile on my face. I think it's one of those kind of movies, like, even though it's a bit depressing, I think just the themes of it, and because it's about these people and their afterlife and stuff, and determining the meaning of their lives. It's one of those movies that kind of makes you happy to be alive. Not in like it's a happy movie, but just the themes of it kind of gives that feeling. It's like a kind of like almost like a feel-good movie sort of thing. So I remember that I smiled at the end, and I was glad that I watched it. I don't know if I'd watch it again. I still don't really know how I feel about it. Now that I'm kind of forced to, like, that was my emotion when I finished, but now that I'm forced to think about it and try to remember a lot of it, I'm not really sure how I feel. But I have notes. I actually don't have a ton of notes, but the plot of this movie is basically, it starts off with this couple. The name's Larry and Joan, and they're old now. They've been together for 65 years, and they go to a family party, and Joan has cancer, and she's hiding that from the family. And then they're at the party. Larry is shown, because Joan has two husbands. That's like the whole thing with the movie, is she has to choose between them once all of them are dead. And Joan, her first husband was this man named Luke, who died during the Korean War, and then Larry dies, and he ends up in the afterlife, and you kind of follow him around for a while. He's sort of the main character for like the beginning of the movie. And the other thing with the characters ending up, I really like the concept of the afterlife in this movie. I think it's kind of cool, where I thought, oh, they're just gonna end up where they are when they're younger, like in the afterlife, and they're all younger and stuff. I guess that's just how it is, but it's actually in this universe that it's when you are most happiest in your life. So some people do just straight up turn into children or old people or whenever you're the happiest in their life. And for these three people, it just all happens to be at specific points in their life when they were younger. Not that they're happiest because they were young, but it's more like important things that were going on in their life, and that was the reason it ends up for them so happy. So they're all younger, and I feel like that probably influences a little bit of like her having a hard time picking who she wants to spend her life with. But yeah, Larry ends up there first, and they have this whole, I guess I'll talk about the concept of the afterlife in this movie, where people end up with a assigned quote-unquote afterlife coordinator, which is basically the person that helps you pick an eternity. There's a reason it's called eternity. It's that I guess it's not really like heaven. It's more it's like picking a fantasy world in a sense that you want to live in, not fantasy as in like magic and things, but they're all themed around different stuff. Like there's one that's referred to as the beach eternity, where it's just a beach. You could go to the mountains, you could go to the 1920s, you can go to a magical location. It's like anything you think of. There's all these eternities, and they're being pitched at dead people, kind of like trying to go pick somewhere to go on vacation, basically. And the whole thing with the eternity is that you're stuck there forever. So if you're unhappy with it and you try and escape, you get banished to a place that's just complete darkness. That sounds kind of terrifying. And I also feel like that's not really fair, because I mean, you do get the chance to visit it before you pick one, so that's kind of nice at least. But there's so many, and I feel like it's kind of like life, where you can, sometimes people get tired of the place they're living in, even if it's like their dream destination. And when you're alive and stuff, you have the opportunity to, decide to move around. You, maybe you do, to move around. People, I feel like people aren't designed to be so sedentary, I guess, to only be in one place or doing one thing. It's people change up their lives. Change is a good thing. So I think it's really unfair, personally, that you pick one and it's like, okay, you're stuck there. Because what if you get tired of it? Because that happens to some of the people. Or you hear some, because there's characters that escape throughout the movie. They're not really important. It's more of that's just kind of something that's happening on the side and reminding the main characters, hey, this is a really important choice. And some of them say that it wasn't what they were expecting or whatever. Or I could understand if you get tired of it, of living in the same location the whole time. So yeah, that part of it is sucky. And then there's the whole thing of like, what if you want to go with someone else, which is the entire point of the movie, where, Joan has two husbands and she has to decide which one she wants to go with, and the husbands refuse to cooperate and decide, let's all just live together and share Joan or something. No, they're like, you have to pick one of us, and that sucks, honestly. But yeah, they have the whole thing too of like, what if you die before your partner and you want to wait for them to go to eternity together, which happens to the characters. It happens to Luke. He dies way earlier before Joan, and apparently if you want to stay in the afterlife, which is also an option, or not in eternity, it's like it's kind of like it reminds me of like a convention center or something. I don't really know if you call it like limbo, but it's more of like the place you go when you're trying to decide to stay, and it just looks like the real world, basically. They even have you stay in like a little hotel room and stuff, and you can get a job there, and you can do that while you're deciding on what eternity you want, because you only have a week to pick your eternity, is the thing. Unless you get a job there, then I guess you can stay there. Luke stays working as a bartender, waiting for Joan for 67 years, so there's that. But with the Afterlife Coordinator characters, they're also interesting, because that's a job you can do too. At first I just assumed they weren't humans. I thought maybe they were some kind of non-human being that helps the humans decide. No, they're just straight up humans, and they decide to stay there. Like, there's two Afterlife coordinators. One of them is named Anna, and she's the coordinator for Larry, and there's another one, what is his name? His name is Ryan, and he's Joan's coordinator. He's kind of less important than Anna, because Luke is more of the main... Not Luke, I'm sorry, Larry. This is why it sucks there's so many people with own names in this movie, or at least in terms of main characters. Larry is like more of the main character, so Anna therefore is the more important Afterlife coordinator. Like, her thing is that she has this whole little speech later on in the movie where she says how she her going to the eternity and like not going to eternity, but dying, basically her life sucked, and I guess for her dying was better than living her life. Like, things actually got better for her instead of worse, and she realizes she wanted to help people, and she never picked an eternity because she was just so happy helping people. She'd rather do that and have that job than going to any kind of eternity. And there's like a lot of people that do work at the place where the people go when they're waiting. I don't remember what it's called. I wish I did. Let me see, actually, because let me see if I look on Wikipedia. What is it called? It's just The afterlife. Okay, yeah. But when you go to the place you want to go to, it's called eternity. It's kind of weird. So it's the afterlife, basically. But yeah, I think that's really interesting with Anna, that she decided to stay there forever and help people. But honestly, I feel like that would probably be the best thing to do if you go to an eternity and you get punished if you try to leave or you're not happy with it. You can't switch eternities, which isn't fair because it's supposed to be like you go somewhere to be happy, but if you're not happy, then it's like, okay, you just get stuck in darkness forever. But if you get a job and you stay in the eternity, in the afterlife, at least things stay the same. You're not in any, you could still choose to go to an eternity, and I feel like if anything that would probably be better, because with the eternities it's like, yeah, you're living on, I don't know, I'm gonna make it up, like a beach or something, but it might be things that are so different from your regular life or whatever, or you can't really live your regular life there, that it might feel weird. I mean, you can, like, Joan goes with Luke for a while and they end up living in a cabin in a mountain area, and she realizes she's not happy, and they end up fighting and she tries to leave and it's like a whole thing. And at the end, Larry and Joan, they end up going to an eternity that isn't one that has other people. It's like a discontinued one, and it looks like a neighborhood that's a lot like their regular life. I feel like that would be kind of ideal, probably, of like you just go to live your life same as it always was, basically, as if you weren't ever really dead. And that would probably, I'd imagine, be the easiest to adjust to. And I mean, who knows what's out there? You might be stuck in that one neighborhood, or maybe it's basically like being on Earth again, but I feel like that'd probably be the easiest to adjust to. But it takes them a lot of time to be able to get to that place and the things they have to go through to get there, but yeah, my first note is about the afterlife coordinators. But yeah, Anna's a cool character. I liked her. She ends up befriending Larry, not just really as a client but as a friend, and tells him that she kind of was feeling bad about her job of helping people, but through helping Larry it kind of made her want to do her job again, basically. And Ryan, I keep forgetting his name's Ryan. Yeah, Ryan is Joan's coordinator. You don't really learn much about him or anything, but it's nice that Joan has a coordinator too, because he'll sense sometimes there's tension between her and her husband's, and he'll take Joan to like go cool down or something or whatever. And I thought that maybe Ryan was possibly gay, because I thought that was the reason he wanted Joan to pick Luke at first, in the way he reacts to Luke. But then I think you find out later that he actually dated Anna, the other coordinator, and it turns out the reason Ryan wants Joan to pick Luke is because he thinks of it as like, oh, you didn't get to have a life with Luke because he died in the war, now you can have that life together and stuff. But I feel mixed in this movie. I think because I like Joan, but I don't like either of the two guys. I get that they're madly in love with her, but it's like their entire world, and even in choosing an eternity and stuff, all entirely revolves around Joan. And the fact that it stresses her out so much, and she does offer like, hey, can we just compromise and all live together so I don't have to pick? And they're like, no, I hate this other guy, you have to pick me. And the fact that they put her in that situation just is very, that sucks, honestly, that they're gonna stress her out that badly to pick, because they're in love with her so much that they think, oh, she's gonna pick me, or no, she's gonna pick me, or whatever. And she's having a hard time picking because she loves them both so much, and it's like they can't really comprehend that, of like, oh, she loves the other guy too. And Joan is stressed for like the entire movie, and the characters both try to woo her of going on dates with her in these eternities and stuff, or just even the idea that she has to pick it all. Like, I understand it's a hard choice too, of like Luke is someone, she was like her first love basically, and they would have probably had a family together or something if he was still alive, but then Larry is the person she was with for 67 years, and they had like grandkids together and everything, and they try to guilt trip her so much as well. And there's the whole thing of like Luke waits for her for 67 years, and then Larry waits a week, and then decided to was about to go to an afterlife without Joan, and then he bumped into her on the way and was like, okay, I gotta go with Joan. But the fact that they both loved Joan so much that they don't even think after a while of like, maybe I should just go to an eternity myself or something without her. They don't, that doesn't even occur to them. Like, even when she's stressed out trying to pick one, neither one of them backs down in saying like, okay, other guy, you can go with Joan and I'll go to like my own eternity or whatever. Actually, Larry does try to do that later on, where he figures out something that he thinks Joan would be happier with Luke, because of her appearance matches when she was with him or something, and Larry's like, yeah, go with him, I'll be fine. And then later she decides she actually wants Larry, and Larry is revealed to not have gone to an eternity. He was going to work as a bartender forever in the afterlife, even if it meant knowing Joan was never going to come back and that she'd be with Luke. Like, he basically took himself out of that competition, I guess. And I was originally happy with Joan's decision, because it takes her like an hour to make a decision, and then she decides, I'm actually gonna pick neither. I love you both too much, and she ends up trying to go to the Paris afterlife instead, because there's not really that many characters in this, but Larry and Joan, they had a neighbor, her name is Karen. Larry never really liked her, but she was like Joan's friend and stuff, and neighbor, and Karen's a cool character, actually. Larry and Joan are surprised when they meet her, and they're like, you're so happy now, and it turns out that she was a closeted lesbian, and that's why she was so unhappy at a lot of times when she was alive. But now in the afterlife she's happy, and she ends up kind of growing closer with Joan, and is trying to help her. And I think it's really nice, because the afterlife coordinators, they're like trying to do their job and stuff, but they're not like too involved in Joan's situation, and the husbands are no help because they're the ones that are stressing Joan out. So it's really nice that she ends up hanging out with Karen for a while, and Karen just feels so bad for Joan, and is the only one that's really seems like she actually cares. So they were going to go to an afterlife together, and Joan decided not to pick her husbands, and I cheered, and I was like, that's good for you, girl. Go live your afterlife with your friend Karen, and screw these guys, honestly. But then Larry goes to convince Joan and says, yeah, go with Luke or whatever. Like, I get that he had good intentions, but I feel like it kind of ruined everything, because then it just made Joan more stressed, where she goes with Luke, and then she realizes she doesn't really love him, and then she has to escape out of her eternity and not get killed, and it just puts Joan through so much more stuff. And she does eventually pick Larry in the end. I don't know if it's because she realizes she loved him all along, or because he gave himself up and she realized, yeah, that's the person I should be with. But yeah, that was an interesting twist, and yeah, I was bummed that Joan gets talked out of her decision. But the reason she ends up breaking up with Luke is interesting, and I feel like that made sense, because they lived together in their eternity for a while, and then she breaks up with Luke, because they're both physically young now in their eternity and whatever, but they grew up in like different points in life and everything, where Luke died really young, but Joan got to live to be old, and she experienced like marriage and kids and hardships, and Joan's telling him like, yeah, you didn't have to go through any of that stress in our relationship. And I think that's why she picks Larry. Of like, she went through a lot of stressful stuff with Larry, but she enjoyed that more than her love with Luke, you know, and how it was stress free and whatever. And I feel like that makes sense. It's like their mental range is probably like, you know, she was an old woman and Luke is like 30, and that's their like mental states, you know, and their life experiences. So them trying to get together now, it just doesn't work. I think partially Luke kind of views Joan as like the same person she was when they were still together, but Joan has gone through so much more life and other things and everything that I just feel like they wouldn't have been compatible at all. So yeah, I feel like it makes sense that they end up breaking up. And then the rest of the movie, just after she picks between the two guys, is just so much more interesting. Because like the first hour or so is like, a big chunk of the movie is, you know, and what a lot of the marketing and things were of like, okay, she has to pick between her two husbands. It's kind of almost stressful to watch, but then it just gets way more interesting after she decides like, yeah, I'm not going to spend time with either of you. And then she goes to live with Luke for a while, and you think, okay, that's going to be that. But then she falls out of love with him. And then when she's with Luke in their eternity, there's like these locations, which I think is cool, where you can go and look through your memories. It's almost like going to a museum exhibit or stuff. It's almost like videos in a sense of like your memories with the other person. So she's constantly going through in this area she's not supposed to be in, and like looking through memories of her life with Larry, and just kind of regretting her choice and everything. And then she picks Larry, and then they decide to go. There's even like a whole sequence where Joan is trying to escape back to the afterlife. That was kind of fun. And then she goes to pick Larry and pick an afterlife that looks like their own life. Like they didn't need paradise, and they probably would have gotten tired of it. It's just kind of like they continue their own lives basically. Though there was a part where Larry and Luke end up becoming friends, and I thought that was kind of nice, and I thought that would go somewhere too. I thought they'd become friends, and then I think this is like either when Joan is like spending a day with Carrie, and I think it's right before she ends up making her decision, or it's right afterwards or something like that. And I thought them becoming friends was going to be more of a plot point, like maybe they'd say, oh, let's just go to an eternity together, or our own eternities and whatever, or one of them would give themselves up for Joan, or something would happen because they'd become friends. And then nope, they never really talk to each other again, and it's like, oh, okay. I mean, once Joan ends up breaking up with Luke and she tries to get back to Larry, he isn't even in the rest of the movie anyway. It's like, okay, she's made her choice, and that's all that matters now, basically. So yeah, I do find it a really interesting concept for a movie of like, and that would be horrible to do to anyone if this was like a real world thing of like, you get to some kind of afterlife and it's like, okay, you can only, and I mean, it's not like she has a limit, Joan, of like how many people she can go with. It's more of like, you know, they're not going to agree to go with her together, and that's why she has to pick. It's really the guys that create the problem, because Joan was perfectly fine if they all just went to one eternity together, because you can't leave eternities, you can't like go visit people or anything. And Joan wanted both of them, and she was like, and no, and the two guys were like, nope, you have to choose between us. And I'm glad she struggled so much and that originally she couldn't choose because she loved them both too much. I mean, eventually she does end up choosing Larry when she realizes, yeah, I can't be compatible with Luke, but yeah, I feel so mixed about this movie, but I do think it's really good, and I like the concept. I like these kind of movies where it really just kind of makes you think about this kind of stuff. But yeah, that's my thoughts on Eternity. Glad I got to watch it. Not sure what I'm going to talk about next. We'll see. All right, bye-bye.